Good morning, Year 2. Welcome back. Today is Wednesday, the 20th of January. I hope you're keeping well and that you enjoyed yesterday's home learning. Now, yesterday you were busy planning your part of the story, describing how Mr. White is going to get the baby penguin back home to its family. And today we're going to do a little bit more work to get you ready for writing. So I'm going to share my screen with you now and we'll go through some activities together. Okay. So to start with today, I would like you to get your plan out and I would like you to read it out loud to someone in your house. And then I would like you to think about these questions. Is it interesting to read? Is there enough detail on your plan so that you can write your story? Have you remembered to include a problem that needs resolving? Does your story make sense when you read it out loud to someone? Have you added any adjectives to describe the places they visited on the way? So, for example, in the story, the author describes America as awesome and England as charming. And I was thinking if Mr. White and the baby penguin were to go to the rainforest, I might describe that as beautiful and hot. Have you included a repetitive phrase just like the author? She uses, but it wasn't home, so they travelled to ... So are you going to include a repetitive phrase in your story? And then thinking about the ending. How does your story end? When they get to Antarctica, what happens then? How do the characters feel? Remember, we don't just write the end because your reader needs to be satisfied by your ending. So I want you to press pause and have some time to think about adding a little bit more detail to your planning so then you've got lots of ideas when you start writing. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. Welcome back. Okay, so hopefully you've now included a few more details into your plan. So you should have a good idea about what's going to happen in your story. And you've got some nice vocabulary that you can use to describe the different places that they visit and also think about how they're going to solve any problems they might face on their way. So now we're going to start writing the opening of our story. Now, this is what we call a writer's toolkit, and there's a copy of one of these toolkits on Padlet for you to look at. And we use this in school as a way of focusing our mind on what we need to do to achieve our end result. And our end result is to write a story for other children to read. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to engage the reader. We're trying to entertain the reader and we're trying to create interest with problems and resolutions throughout our story. So we want our story to be the very best it can be. Now, in order to achieve this, to be a successful story, we need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It needs to be a well-sequenced story. We definitely need to use adjectives to describe each setting because without that, the reader can't really paint a picture in their mind of what it might look like. We need to try and extend our sentences by using conjunctions such as and, but, because, when, and so. Now, it's really important that during your story you create and solve problems. This will make it interesting for your reader to read. At the end of the story, it needs to have a satisfying end. We don't want your reader to end the story feeling a bit disappointed with the story in the end. Another thing you might want to include in your story is to include that repetitive phrase that the author used in the story Poles Apart. And then, of course, in every piece of writing, we need to make sure we use a range of punctuation, full stops, exclamation marks, question marks. And one we're going to talk about in a minute is an ellipsis. You might have seen this appear a lot in the story. That is our 3 dots. And sometimes when children come across the ellipsis, they do this noise, da, 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 because it's creating a bit of tension in your writing and your reading. And finally, always very important that whenever you write, you must read through what you've written to check it makes sense because you may need to make some changes. Okay, let's carry on. So we're going to do some shared writing of a story opening, and I have done one for you. Normally in class we would do this together, but I have written one for you to have a look at, and then you can have a go at doing your own opening. So you're all going to start with this opening sentence. This is where the penguin cracks open from the egg and Mr. White meets the penguin chick for the first time. He says, "Hello, how did you get there?" he said. "Where is your family?" And that's where you're going to start your story from. So this is an idea of an opening. The little chick looked up at Mr. White and started to cry. Mr. White lifted the chick gently with his soft paws. "Do not worry, we will get you home," he said kindly. With the chick safely tucked under Mr. White's hat, they travelled over the frosty Arctic plains. After many hours of walking, they reached the sea. There they met a kind whale who offered to give them a ride. Mr. White and the chick hopped on and they set off over the cold, bumpy sea. So as you can see, what I've done at the beginning is I haven't launched into where they're going to. We need to think about how the characters are feeling, because of course this little chick has hatched, probably expecting to see its mother there, but instead she's hatched, or he's hatched, and in front of them they've seen this giant white fluffy bear, and they probably don't even know what it is. So the little chick might be feeling scared and frightened, and indeed might start to cry. Then you've got to think, well, how would Mr. White respond to that? How would he react to the little chick crying? What's he going to do to make the little chick feel better? Once you've talked about the character's feelings, you've then got to explain to the reader what Mr. White decides to do. And in my shared write, he decides to tuck the chick under his hat and begin to travel over the frosty Arctic plains to take the little chick home. Now, as after they've walked for many hours, they meet a kind whale. So you might want to think about who are your characters going to meet at the start of their journey, and how are they going to get from the North Pole to the first country. In my shared write, they get a lift on a whale, so they sail to their first country on the tail of a whale. Reminds me a little bit of The Snail on the Whale by Julia Donaldson. So what we'd like you to do today is we'd like you to write the opening of your story. So start with this opening line. You can write that in your book to start with, or on your piece of paper, whatever you're using. Then spend about 25 minutes writing your opening. Make sure you use your plan. Think about how the characters are feeling and what they decide to do first, and how are they going to travel back to the South Pole. Once you've written your opening, then read it through, preferably reading it out loud to someone in your house. Once you've written your opening, it's time to proofread. This means checking for any mistakes or errors in your writing. So you might want to check for capital letters, make sure there's a capital letter at the start of each sentence, and for names and places, and that you've got a full stop at the end of each sentence. And also check your spellings. Use your sounds, but also use your year 1 and your year 2 common exception words. So good luck. I hope you enjoy writing your opening, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, where we're going to carry on writing our story. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.